The 10-2 Vikings are dogs in Detroit with the Lions favored now by 2.5 points. Plus, what's going on with Ed Donatell's defense and how it can be fixed. We're discussing that and plenty more. It's coming up next on Superior Sports Talk.
Locked On Sports Minnesota Podcasts. It's endless Minnesota Vikings talk with the diverse voices of your local experts. Now it's Superior Sports Talk with KARE 11 sports anchor Reggie Wilson and Luke Inman. It's 30 minutes every day, and it's all the Minnesota sports you need. It's Superior Sports Talk, and it starts now.
Back in the lab, Reggie and Luke back at it. Another episode, Superior Sports Talk, presented by Locked On Sports Minnesota. It's your daily 30-minute breakdown, everything Minnesota sports, which you can now find streaming on your Roku or Amazon Fire Stick devices. Just look out for our Locked On Sports Minnesota app there as well. That's the man, Reggie Wilson, on Twitter, at Reggie Wilson TV. Check him out every night up on KARE 11. Wednesday, Reg, hump day. What's happening? How you feeling?
Feeling good, man. Got pretty good sports night here in Minnesota. I think we're still just kind of on pins and needles waiting to see what Carlos Correa does. So it's a Wednesday. It's a Wednesday.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'd love to talk about the Wolves. They got a, 3-4 day break. We'll have to wait for tomorrow to talk about that, but so much to get into. First, remember, follow along Locked On Minnesota YouTube channel. Hit the subscribe button. Leave us a comment. And on Twitter, give us a follow. It's at Locked On MIN. And remember, we're a podcast too, free and available, all platforms, Spotify, Apple, you name it. We got it. Tons of great choices over there. You got the Ron Johnson Show. You got the Football Party and more. Your one-stop shop with endless Vikings talk with local experts. Do us a favor, hit the subscribe button and drop us a 5-star review. Speaking of YouTube, every day I post that new poll up on Locked On Minnesota YouTube community page. Yesterday, I asked fans, who was the unsung hero in Sunday's win versus the Jets? Let's switch it up today. Instead of me reading off the choices and the results, you tell me first who your unsung hero was. Who you got here, Reg?
Honestly, it's probably Cam Bynum for the plays that he made on Sunday and also the game-sealing interception. It had to be him.
Okay, I like that. Obviously, can't go wrong with Bynum. Here were the 4 choices. I thought Bynum may be a little bit too sung of a hero, not so much unsung. So I went with Jordan Hicks because of that pass breakup in the end zone on Barrios. I still say without that play, Vikes may lose that game. Alexander Madison, he scored a touchdown. Blake Brandel or Patrick Jones, who had the team's only sack. Here were the results. Patrick Jones runs away with it, 51%, followed by Blake Brandel in second at 23%. And I would like to say, all Blake Brandel has done is hold his own against Von Miller and the Bills, Pats and Jets defense, arguably the top 2 defenses in the league, and the Cowboys, which that was a learning experience for all 5 of those guys, so not holding that one against them. He's been rock solid, filling in for Darisaw, and I think he's got enough good tape now to maybe put out there that someone could see him as maybe a possible future starting left tackle in the league. Really pumped for him. Hicks and Madison were 3 and 4, but I'll say this. You go to the comments section, and Duke Shelley's name was littered all throughout, calling out, just like Brandel, the great job he's done filling in despite teams trying to pick on him down in the red zone over and over. Jalen Reagor also got a few shout outs there too. So there you go. Remember, go check out the Locked On Sports Minnesota YouTube page every day. Posting a new poll over there. Hit the subscribe button so you never miss a beat. Go comment. Let us know what you think. All right. To football we go. Reg, 5-7 Lions favored this week versus the 10-2 Vikings. Line in Vegas opened at 1, now has moved all the way up to 2.5. 10 wins later, 9 one-score victories on their resume, and this Vikings team still getting no respect. Tell me why they're underdogs this week and what makes this Lions team just so dangerous.
I think it's just all these one-score games, them winning by the skin of their chins every week. I think that just does not inspire confidence that the Vikings are quote-unquote for real. You know, they look at the record, but they're like, man, these could have gone the other way. But it's like they didn't. So you kind of have to take them as where they are, you know. But I think, you know, it's recency bias as well. You know, the Lions are putting up a bunch of points. You know, they beat up on Jacksonville, which is like, you Jacksonville is a much improved team from the mess with Urban Meyer last year, but I guess it's just recency bias. Jamal Williams is running hard. They've developed like that two-headed monster there, and Goff is passing it all over the field with their weapons. They got Jamison Williams coming in as well. Like, the defense is playing a little better as well. Like, I think that's probably what's going on there. The people are seeing the last few games from the Lions and seeing the last few games from the Vikings, and they're kind of measuring them against each other and figuring that the Lions are playing much better than the Vikings. And it's like, okay, like, I guess, but it's kind of weird. The Vikings own a win over the Lions this year. They own 10 wins this year overall, but somehow bettors are like, oh, no, but we like the Lions in this one. It's like, okay, like, I guess the Vikings just seem like they're going to be a team that continues to have to prove teams wrong, and especially until if it even happens, but especially until they just go up and just steamroll a team. But it remains to be seen if that's even going to happen this year.
Yeah, Vegas just daring bettors to bet the Vikings, and they still won't do it right now. It's wild to think about, though, after that 1-6 start, they've not only battled their way back to respectability, one could argue they're playing their way to a wild card spot. And if they got in a dance, watch out. This could be the team nobody wants to play come January. You never want to play the team that's red hot, first of all, playing with house money and with nothing to lose. And the Lions are blazing right now with their only loss in the last 5 weeks was to the Bills Thanksgiving Day, a game they easily could have and probably should have walked away winners from. Their offense, one of the best in the leagues. They just put up 40 last week, as you mentioned, versus the Jags. They've scored at least 30 or more 6 times already this year. And now, scariest part about it, you mentioned it, they're finally getting healthy for the first time. Sunday, they're going to have Amon-Ra St. Brown, who I think is the most underrated wideout in the NFL right now. DJ Chark's coming back. Josh Reynolds is going to be back. And, oh, yeah, they're going to unleash that top 15 first-round pick, Jamison Williams, this week versus the Vikes for the first time. When you mix all that with that outstanding young offensive line, maybe the best two-headed running game in the league, Jared Goff just licking his chops right now. And the defense, too, that was always the Achilles heel. They're going to have to score 40 points if they want to win every week. Defense has gotten better. Aiden Hutchinson, been the rock they've needed in the trenches over these last 4 or 5 years and rushing the passer. Jeff Okudah kind of revived his career on the boundary over there at cornerback. And whether it's Blake Rodrigo the first half of the season or now this 7th rounder, James Houston, who, by the way, first guy in franchise history to record multiple sacks in his Lions debut. They've got rookie linebackers that are playing at a high level right now. So whether they win or not this Sunday, I've just been saying this for a while now, as you know. Watch out. This NFC North could be flipped upside down over the next few years with how much just young, solid talent this Lions team has. Not to mention 5 top 75 picks in this upcoming draft, including what should be a top 3 pick. All right, Reg, so when it comes to trying to stop anyone, let alone the Lions' high-potent offense, the Vikings have struggled mightily this year. Ed Donatell's defense, one of the worst in multiple categories. Specifically, though, everybody picks on this one. The yards given up, they rank dead last in the league. They made Mac Jones, they made Mike White look like Pro Bowlers back-to-back weeks. So it's scary to think about what Goff might be able to do. But their one saving grace is this bend but don't break style of defense. I love what you mentioned yesterday. Pats and Jets, despite all their success moving the ball in between the 20s, 1 for 9 in the red zone. And of course, the Vikings are just finding ways to win and close out these games at the end. Is that sustainable, though, once you get into the playoffs with such high-powered teams and more so just in general? Why all the fuss in the first place? Like, where are these defensive woes coming from? Is it Ed Donatell in the scheme, what he's calling, or is it a player personnel issue given all the injuries that they've faced? What do you think?
I think it's a mixture of the two. I think I talked to Harrison Phillips a few times over the last month, and he talked about it like they subscribe to the bend but don't break defense. And so they're going to give up some yardage, but their hope is that they can keep teams out of the end zone and they can hold teams to field goals when they do, get beyond the 50-yard line. And so that's, I think, a scheme thing. I think that's just kind of like a mentality of the defense thing. And, I do think that while they do have some key pieces along each front or each level of that defense, the defensive line is strong. The linebacking unit is strong, and they have some strong pieces in the secondary as well. I think, they probably could bolster some of those units to kind of help them along a little bit more in some of these situations where they can be a little bit more of a shutdown defense. And so I think it's a mixture of the two of those that kind of keeps them, just because when you look at what they did against like some of these high scoring teams, like against Buffalo, it was like, oh man, like if this defense is not going to do what it's supposed to do, like it's going to be a long day. And at some point in that first half, it did look like that. It was like, oh man, like this defense is getting exposed. But then they kind of tightened up, allowed the offense to kind of get back in it, and they were able to get the game into overtime, and we saw what happened. And so when you ask, is it sustainable? I guess it just depends. Like it's a any given Sunday thing. Like they'll try to bend but don't break. And, it'll be sustainable on some drives. Other drives they may give up some things, but it is encouraging if you look at it from that defensive perspective that they have kept teams out of the end zone as much as they have, because that part is sustainable.
Mm-hmm.
And if they can continue to do that, they continue to get confidence. And it's like, it's something about that team. Like once they get, in the 20s and you're like, nothing, they get nothing. It's a mentality thing. And look, people will trade 3 points for 7 points, especially from the defensive perspective, all day long. If they just continue to give up 3 points. I feel like we saw young well, he's not young Jeezy anymore. He's old Jeezy, Greg the Leg Zuerlein. I feel like we saw him just kicking a bajillion field goals on Sunday. Like it was ridiculous, but they weren't touchdowns. That's sustainable, I feel like.
Yeah, it's a mindset. It's in their DNA now. It's almost like the defense is licking their chops once they get down to the 20s, ready to make a splash play. That Bills game was a perfect example. Bills, Josh Allen just marching up and down the field, but when it got down to the red zone in crunch time, Patrick Peterson comes away with 2 crucial red zone interceptions. Obviously, last week versus the Jets, Cam Bynum seals the deal at the end as well. Every person knows, though, a good defense starts and stops in the trenches with stopping the run, getting after the passer. Kind of cliche, right? But right now, the Vikings run stop win rate, 16th in the league. Dead middle. Not good, not bad. In fact, I think they've actually looked good outside the Cowboys and Eagles games. You take out those 2 games, which I know you can't do, but they'd probably rank somewhere near top 10, 11, 12-ish, somewhere in there. You get to the pass rush, though, they're 29th in the league in pass rush win rate, and that's where you start to scratch your head. Za'Darius Smith was on fire those first 2 months. Danielle Hunter, we know he's capable of double-digit sacks every year when healthy, plus maybe the best depth on the team with Wanham and Jones when you look at the landscape of any other position. So it's just kind of confusing. And remember, the first half of the year, Donatel kept just pleading with us, be patient. He said this is what the first 7-8 weeks are supposed to look like when you make the switch from a 4-3 to a 3-4, and that Hunter would be just fine. But here we are, it's week 13, and it almost feels like it's getting worse in some aspects. And for me, it comes down to the fact Za'Darius just doesn't look healthy right now. And when I look at the fact the NFC North pretty much all but wrapped up, and the fact that you have 2 young edge guys ready to log some snaps, I think it's time we have a long discussion about letting him rest until the playoffs, getting him back to his healthy, explosive self for that playoff run. And I think Wanham and Jones can hold their own and get some valuable playing time in the process. And the reward of getting a more explosive Za'Darius for the playoffs outweighs the risk of sitting him these next few weeks. That's the biggest issue with this defense, though, in my eyes. I think it's time to just call a spade, because Za'Darius, you see him out there. He's just hobbling around, and it's only going to get worse if you continue to play him 50, 60 snaps this next month. By the time you get into the playoffs, there might not be anything left in the tank, but if they'll find a way to start getting pressure again, if this defense can get after the passer again, I think this defense as a whole start to play at a much higher level on a game-to-game, week-in and week-out basis. All right, coming up next, I'm going to ask Reggie, if Kirk Cousins is still underrated. But first, Vikings now 10-1 to win the Super Bowl. Vikings open this week versus the Lions as 1-point underdogs. That line is now moved all the way up to 2.5. Make sure to keep tabs all season long and check those odds out and more with BetOnline. BetOnline.net, fastest and easiest way to check in on all your betting needs. Find all your favorite sports and events at the #1 online source for odds, lines, and games. Stats, news, info, you want it, they got it. They got NFL, NHL, NBA, even MMA and UFC. BetOnline makes betting easy and is your #1 source for all your betting needs. Go to betonline.net today to learn more. That's betonline.net, where the game starts. All right, back to football we go. ESPN came out with this analytic piece noting which teams in the league are the most analytically driven right now. Vikings were actually tied for 5th, right behind the Browns at #1, Ravens, Eagles, Falcons, Bills. So I see the Browns up there, and it makes sense knowing Kwesi came from that Andrew Berry tree over from Cleveland, brought a lot of those same philosophies over with him here to Minnesota. The article also goes on to ask 21 of these teams' analytic groups, which players, based off these numbers, are undervalued. Wouldn't you know it? Kirk Cousins was the top of the list, the most undervalued player in the league right now, according to this little poll and consensus. One front office member even said this: Cousins probably isn't the most undervalued controlling for his position, but he probably generates the most value compared to how much people think he does. He's easily a well above average quarterback. Reg, why is Kirk Cousins still so undervalued or underrated despite the 10-2 record? What do you think?
I think it's because you look at the numbers. 2,900 yards passing, 18 touchdowns, 9 interceptions. Nothing to really like sneeze at. Nothing to really go home to mom and say, "Oh man, our quarterback is a quarterback." You look at, guys like Joe Burrow. You look at Justin Herbert. You look at Patrick Mahomes. All these guys that are, much more explosive. Josh Allen, and much more flashy. And Kirk is not that. He's just like a steady Eddie guy. And a lot of times in this season, which is probably why the public perception is down on him, and even Vegas is down on him, picking them as an underdog against the Lions this Sunday. Like, I think it's because, like, usually teams go by their quarterback. And this Vikings team is going by their quarterback, and he's just winning games. But, like, we haven't seen very many, like, 300-yard passing performances, 3+ touchdown passing performances where he's just lighting it up. He's making just enough plays to help them win games, but he's not necessarily being the, overly deciding factor on why they win games. He's not willing them to wins with his arm or his legs. And I think that's something that, you see from this modern day, like, superstar quarterback that we just don't see from Kirk Cousins. He's not a flashy guy. Him wearing those chains on the plane is probably the most flashy that we've seen of him this season. He's passed for more yards than he has before. He's thrown for more touchdowns. I think the interception number is up compared to his career numbers. And so it's not like flashy. And then you look at Sunday, he didn't really have his best. Didn't even get over 200 yards passing in that game. And there were several throws that he missed. And that kind of feeds the agenda to, like, oh, Kirk Cousins is not that good. And it's just like, well, he's not like, a top 5 QB in the league, but he is more than serviceable. He's much more than a game manager. They can put the ball in his hands and let him make plays, and he's done that. So I think he's proven that. But there's just this stigma that has gone with him that he's not a big-time quarterback. The primetime Kirk, he performed well in that primetime game on Thanksgiving against the Patriots, and it still wasn't enough to prove the naysayers wrong. So that's the narrative that has been built with Kirk Cousins, and so that's just kind of what's happened to him at this point. And he just has to continue to show week in and week out that he can will, or not even will his teams, but he can help put his team in position to win these games. And really, that's all that matters.
You're right. It's such a numbers-driven game now, isn't it? And people want Madden video game numbers from your quarterback and star
Yeah.
players every week and every year. That's like the bar now. That's the standard. And I think you're right. Unfortunately for Cousins, he just isn't putting up the stats like he has in the past or what we all hoped he would under this offensive-minded head coach and scheme. And he just doesn't fit the prototypical modern quarterback anymore, right? I mean, everybody, when you look at the prototypical guy, they're dual threat guys at minimum. Everybody wants the dual threat guys. Lamar, Patrick Mahomes, people forget, rushes for 40, 50 yards a game. Josh Allen, there's tons of them. And Kirk just doesn't fit that modern prototypical quarterback in today's day and age. Fact remains, though, he's finding a way to win games. Like you said, his team's 10-2. And at the end of the day, I guarantee you, fans would take the wins over the stats and Pro Bowls, etc., all day, every day. And I do think the numbers will come under this new scheme and regime. It's just taken a bit longer, both offensively and defensively, than I think we all expected. That's all. All right, time has come for our Gimme One segment. Gimme. First one up here, Reg. There are 7 intra-divisional matchups in Week 14. Some huge matchups this Sunday on the line. Give me one team who, if they win, would have the most meaning. Which one team needs a win this week?
You know what? It's funny to say, but I look at this Philadelphia New York Giants game, and we talked about it yesterday. The Giants are still alive technically for the division, with a couple games against the Eagles still left on the schedule. So if they're able to find a way to win on Sunday against the Eagles, like, that may do a lot for not only the Giants, but that may do a lot for the public perception of what the Eagles are. You know, the Eagles went out there and just steamrolled the Tennessee Titans on Sunday, and it was just like, oh, dang, like, this team is all world. Like, just go ahead and book them in the Super Bowl. But like, if they are able to lose to the Giants on Sunday, then that's when you start thinking like, okay, like, they are beatable. Maybe the Vikings are much more alive than maybe we think. And I think that just kind of, the parity of the league is what it is. And I think that probably like helps in the grand scheme of things, especially if your perspective is here in Minnesota as a Vikings fan. You're like, yeah, like, you can see different blue, because they've only lost one game this year. And we saw what happened when the Vikings went up against them head to head. And so I think if you kind of see a little bit of a blueprint out there of maybe how you can beat the Eagles team, because, you know, when the Commanders beat them on Monday night, like, you saw some things, but I think you more so saw the Eagles kind of beating themselves. But if they can go out there and actually beat the Eagles, the Giants, and kind of show like, okay, this is what you have to do to stabilize the Eagles, I think that does a lot in the NFC picture as a whole.
If they were to beat the Eagles, that would go such a long way. Remember, they got a tough schedule here, but they play the Eagles twice in the next 3 weeks. If they were to start that out by winning this week, that would go such a long way, as you just mentioned, not only for their division, but for the entire landscape of the NFC, help the Vikings out quite a bit as well. Remember, the Vikings still have to play the Giants next week, too, after the Lions. So that's going to be interesting if the Giants win this week as well. You could say the Jets beating the Bills, that would be huge, too, for the same reasons. It would be huge, not only for the AFC East, but the entire AFC playoff race would be just complete chaos at that point. Those 2 games I'm kind of circling, but for sure, when you think about the Vikings lens, certainly you're going to scan over to the NFC. I think this Giants-Eagles game has a lot riding on that one. Next one up, give me the one off-season trade. There was a lot of trades this season. Give me the one off-season trade that has helped or hurt the receiving team the most. I can think of 2 or 3 really big ones that come to mind.
Yeah, we just talked about the Eagles. That AJ Brown,
that's what I was going to say.
That might have messed around and got the Titans GM fired yesterday.
Yeah.
Good Lord, what the heck?
Yeah.
Like, the Titans have been largely successful under John Robinson, and he's shown the door by Amy Adams Strunk. He's out to dry, and it's like, apparently now Vrabel didn't want to trade AJ Brown. He wasn't necessarily consulting Vrabel or Amy Adams Strunk on these personnel decisions, and now Vrabel is going to get kind of like a Belichick type role on personnel decisions moving forward. That AJ Brown trade was, the guy is a Pro Bowler and all pro receiver. Like, you don't just try. They got a first round pick and a third round pick for him.
First and a
that
third.
ended up
Yeah.
being
Yep.
Traylon Burks, and Burks looks like he can be a player in the league. And so that's fine. But man, you look at what AJ Brown did to them on Sunday, and yikes.
The hard part is finding these guys, scouting them, drafting, picking the right guy, then developing them. The easy part is paying them after all your hard work is paid off. Titans forgot to do that part. They let him walk. Yeah, they get some good compensation back, but having a true alpha number one wideout in this league right now is so beneficial. It's so clear in this pass-happy league, and so beneficial for your quarterback as well. And we've seen the progression and development Jalen Hurts specifically has been able to take now that he's got more than just Devontae Smith and Dallas Goedert. He's got that true number one big-bodied weapon out there. That, I think, has been the biggest key for his development during this offseason and through the 2022 season. Devontae Adams to the Raiders, that was obviously big. Tyreek Hill to the Miami Dolphins. I still think Mike Daniels, he still would have been successful and found ways to put points up with Jalen Waddle and Tua. Tyreek, obviously, the cherry on top. He's a stud. But that A.J. Brown to Philly has helped out not only Jalen Hurts, but obviously the entire Eagles team in a big way. And like you said, vice versa has really hurt the Titans. The GM, as you mentioned, gets fired yesterday. All right, last one. Got to sneak one T-Wolves in here. We haven't talked Wolves in a couple days. Wolves play tonight. Give me the one thing you hope the T-Wolves are working on or improve the most during this 3-4 day rest.
Just continuing to build that chemistry. It was interesting. I got a chance to talk to the GOAT, Rebecca Brunson, yesterday at an event, and I asked her, I'm like, what's going on with this Timberwolves team? Why can't they do what they built this team to do? And she was just like, she felt like they're just pressing out there. They're thinking too much out there. She was like, you look at the Cavs with their two big men, Jared Allen and Evan Mobley, and she was like, man, they're just going out there and running. She's like, Donovan Mitchell is not just like pronouncing like, hey, let's get into the pick and roll. Like, it's just happening organically. And she was like, there was a lot of pressure being put on this team to make it work because they did make this like zag while the league was zigging and put these two big men together. And now you're doing it without one of your big men, and you're still trying to figure out like the chemistry. Okay, how do we get the ball and put it in a position where Rudy can, number one, clean up the boards, get him the ball in the paint in favorable positions where he can just high percentage bucket it up. And also, they still are just trying to figure out how to get themselves in their spots to make sure that they're making these shots. Because, we talked about it, what was on Friday on the round table, like, we don't anticipate this team is going to be shooting it at the low clip that they're shooting it right now. We, hope to see them improve a little bit more, but they're going to have to try to get some chemistry going and just slow down and just play basketball. Like, just go out there and hoop, and I think that's something that they're still trying to get in a groove of, especially integrating Rudy into it, trying to figure out how they do it without Cat. It's a work in progress. And one thing Rebecca Brunson was saying is, people expected that it would be kind of like hills and valleys, and that's exactly what's happening. But she felt like the worst of it is behind them, and I think that's what the fans are hoping for as well.
Yeah, T-Wolves enjoyed that nice little break there. They play in the backyard tonight at Target Center. Tip-off 7 p.m. Central Standard Time against the Indiana Pacers. Rest assured, Reggie and I will be back tomorrow to break that down. Last one, the 2023 Vikings opponents were released. I don't know if you saw this. Give me one non-divisional home game and road game you're most excited or intrigued to see next year. Here's your real quick options outside of, obviously, the NFC North. At home, Saints, Bucks, Chiefs, Chargers. On the road, Falcons, Panthers, Broncos, Raiders. There's still a couple teams left in the air. Depends on who wins the division. Vikings obviously are going to play the winners of the NFC East and AFC North, along with the NFC West as well. But of the teams we know for sure, which one just excites you when you look at the schedule next year?
Wait, so are they playing the AFC West next year? Is that
They're
what's
playing the
going on?
AFC. Yeah, they're playing the AFC West next year. So they get the Chiefs and Chargers at home and the Broncos and Raiders on the road. And then the NFC South, they got the Saints and Bucks at home. They got the Falcons and Panthers on the road. They're either going to end up playing the winner of the NFC West, which is either going to be the Niners or Seahawks. And then they're going to play the winner of the NFC East, probably the Eagles, maybe the Cowboys on the road. And the AFC North, either the Bengals or the Steelers. So 3 games still left up in the air. But of the opponents we know, which one just excites you that you're looking forward to being able to watch and cover?
Well, if they do end up playing the Cowboys again, can we just get one in Jerry World? Like, don't bring them back to
baby.
Minnesota. Things just happen there. We don't want to see that anymore. But I think when you talk about just the star power and just the excitement of it all, you talk about a former Super Bowl champion, the Kansas City Chiefs. Like, that would be a fun game to go to and be a part of. I've never seen Patrick Mahomes play in person. That's still kind of like one of those bucket list things. Like, I've seen Lamar in person a few times. He's awesome to watch. I was there when he made Kevin Harlan just go crazy when he hit the spin move and took it 60 yards against the Bengals a couple years ago. So, like, I've seen my fair share. I've seen Justin Herbert in person. He's phenomenal to watch. Like, I've seen some things, okay? I've seen some things, but I've not seen Patrick Mahomes. I would love that matchup. Like, beyond any other matchup, I would love to see that.
I'm going to start saving a little bit of my paycheck to the side right now because those Chiefs tickets are not going to be cheap. I can't wait to see the Chiefs. Chargers game is up there too. I think the Chiefs do top it. And you talk about Super Bowl star power. If Tom Brady's still playing, if he's still kicking the can down the road next year, seeing Tom Brady at US Bank Stadium just for the historical value, just watching Tom Brady one last time, that'll be really fun as well. So going to be interesting to see. Again, most of their schedule is already released. Again, we got to see who wins the NFC West. Niners or Seahawks, we're going to get them at home. And then the winners of the NFC East, probably the Eagles, could be the Cowboys in the AFC North again. That'll be either at Cincy or at Baltimore. Going to be interesting. All right, that's a wrap today. Remember, like, rate, review, and subscribe to the YouTube channel. And join us every day for another episode with your 30-minute breakdown of everything Minnesota sports. We're a podcast too, free and available, all platforms. Subscribe, drop us that 5-star review, and find us now streaming on your Roku or Amazon Fire Stick devices. Just look out for our Locked On Sports Minnesota app there as well. That's the man, Reggie Wilson, on Twitter, at Reggie Wilson TV. Check him out every night up on KARE11. Luke Inman on Twitter, at Luke_Spinman. Special thanks to the producer, Matt DeBritz. We're back tomorrow with another episode of Superior Sports Talk, part of Locked On Sports Minnesota. For Reggie, I'm Luke. Until tomorrow, signing out.
Be blessed. Spread love today.